Welcome to OLevels Economics Unit 6, the role of markets in allocating resources. The US economy, like all economies, is constantly changing. Some industries are on the rise, shale oil production and high technology, for example. Others, like glass manufacturing and postal services, are in decline. The methods of production are also changing. In the car industry, for instance, more capital goods like advanced machinery and robotics are replacing traditional labor. Consumption patterns are shifting. The richest Americans are consuming more goods and services, while the poorest are consuming less. This raises some important questions. Why are these changes happening? Who is making the decisions? And how do these decisions actually come into effect? To understand this, we need to look at the three key allocation decisions that every economy must answer. The first question is what to produce. Since resources are limited, an economy must choose whether to prioritize essentials like healthcare and housing, or allocate more towards leisure goods, luxury items, or defense. The second question is how to produce. Should production rely heavily on manual labor, or should it shift towards capital intensive methods using machines and technology? And the third question is who receives the products produced? Because we can't produce enough of everything for everyone, societies must decide whether goods should be distributed based on people's needs or their ability to earn and spend. The answers to these questions depend on the economic system in place. An economic system is essentially the framework of institutions, organizations, and mechanisms that a country uses to organize production and distribution. There are three main economic systems: planned, market, and mixed. Let's start with the planned economic system. In this system, often called a command or controlled economy, the government makes all major decisions. It decides what will be produced, how it will be produced, and who will get the output. Land and capital are owned by the state, and workers are employed by the government. State-owned enterprises receive directives about production and methods. The government also decides on wages, sets prices, and distributes goods. In many planned systems, basic necessities like housing, healthcare, transport, and education are provided free or at very low cost. The second type is the market economic system, sometimes called a free enterprise economy. Here, consumers play the central role. Through their buying decisions, they signal to producers what they want. Firms, in turn, decide how to produce goods and services in the most cost-efficient way while still maintaining quality. Land and capital are privately owned, and the government's role is minimal. Some firms are capital-intensive, like steel companies that rely heavily on machinery and technology. Others are labor-intensive, like hotels, which employ many workers relative to the amount of capital they use. In a market economy, income plays a critical role. Those with higher earnings or in-demand skills have the most influence over what gets produced because they can afford to buy more. The third type is the mixed economic system, which combines elements of both planning and markets. Now let's focus on the role of the price mechanism in a market economy. Prices act as signals, incentives, and rationing devices. They move resources automatically as demand and supply change. For example, if the demand for bananas increases, prices rise. Higher prices mean higher profits, which encourage firms to produce more bananas. This requires them to hire more workers, use more capital, and allocate more land to banana production. Meanwhile, if the demand for apples falls, the opposite happens. Prices drop, profits fall, and firms reduce output, cutting back on resources like labor and land. This constant adjustment is driven by consumers, who reveal their preferences through the prices they are willing to pay. The price mechanism therefore ensures that resources are redirected from less popular goods to those that consumers want more. The price mechanism also provides incentives. If consumers want more of a good and are willing to pay a higher price, producers are motivated to increase supply to capture greater profits. This is why resources are constantly shifting. New technologies, changes in consumer tastes, or variations in production costs all lead to changes in prices, and firms respond to those changes. Another important role of the price mechanism is rationing. When demand exceeds supply, prices rise, and only those willing and able to pay the higher price can access the product. For instance, if a disease damages a potato crop, supply falls. At first, this creates a shortage, but the rising price ensures that demand eventually falls to match supply. This way, the market clears, and balance is restored between consumers and producers. Quick recap. The three key allocation decisions are what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce. The main factors that determine the type of economic system are who decides what is produced, how resources are allocated, and who owns the capital and land. The market system relies on the price mechanism to allocate resources. Price will rise if demand increases or supply decreases. Thanks for watching.